Love isn't just about promises. For Alex Bennett, choosing between ambition and family shattered everything. But can Nia Harper's final painting rekindle his cold heart? What secrets does the painting hold? In the high-rise office of a towering skyscraper, Alex Bennett leaned against the floor, to ceiling glass window, his eyes fixed on the sprawling urban landscape below. The night sky glittered with city lights, each tiny glow piercing through the darkness like fragile sparks of hope. From this height, everything seemed smaller, more manageable, just the way he liked to keep his life. In his hand was a glass of red wine, the expensive kind Alex always chose to end a long workday. The liquid swirled in the glass, reflecting the faint overhead light, exuding a cold yet captivating beauty. Behind him, a large desk was cluttered with papers and unsigned contracts, yet everything remained meticulously arranged. The uneven stacks of documents resembled the rungs of a ladder, each one propelling Alex further up his career. Draped over his chair was a finely tailored black suit jacket, and on his wrist, a Swiss watch gleamed, a constant reminder that time was the most valuable asset of all. Alex took a slow sip of the wine, his lips curling into a faint, almost mocking smile. He muttered to himself, his voice low but steady in the stillness of the office.
Everything in life comes at a price: time, money, energy. All of it has to be invested wisely. I can't let emotions mess things up.
At that moment, the shrill ring of a phone shattered the silence. Alex glanced at the screen.
Nia.
A familiar name, yet at this moment, it carried a weight that was difficult to ignore. He set the wine glass on the desk, his fingers hovering over the screen. Instead of answering, he pressed decline.
She'll understand,
Alex murmured, as if trying to convince himself. Turning away, his eyes flickered with a brief trace of uncertainty before hardening into their usual cold resolve. He sank into the chair behind his desk, but the image of Nia's missed call lingered in his mind. A faint, hesitant voice whispered in his head.
Maybe she needs me, but I don't have time. I can't.
In a small corner of her art studio, Nia Harper bent over the canvas, focused on the final strokes of her painting. The warm hues of a sunset gradually emerged on the canvas, each brushstroke infused with her emotions. But her slender hands trembled without pause. Her naturally curly hair cascaded down her shoulders, with a few strands clinging to spots of paint. Sweat dotted her face. Though it was unclear whether it came from physical exhaustion or the mental strain of the illness that loomed over her like a shadow. Nia paused, setting her brush down to take in her work. She sighed, her eyes clouded with unease.
Something's still missing, but I don't know what,
she whispered to herself, almost unconsciously.
If I can just finish this, if I can just keep myself busy, maybe I can forget.
Her gaze drifted to the phone lying nearby. The screen lit up, displaying.
Missed call, Alex.
A sharp pang shot through her chest, but she quickly looked away, as though staring too long might let her emotions spill over uncontrollably. She picked up the phone, her fingers hesitating over Alex's number, but after a few rings, she ended the call, her heart heavy with an unspoken question she dared not answer.
He doesn't care, does he? Or has he truly forgotten that I need him now more than ever?
Setting the phone aside, her spirit sank lower. She murmured softly, as though trying to soothe her own pain.
Maybe he's just too busy. I shouldn't bother him.
Her hand rested over her chest, where a deep scar lay hidden beneath her shirt. Closing her eyes, memories of their early days together came rushing back. Laughter, promises, and the gentle gaze Alex once reserved for her. But now, they were nothing more than fragments of a bygone time. Nia turned back to her painting, gripping the brush with trembling hands. Her eyes glimmered with a mix of anguish and determination.
I have to be strong. I've survived this long. I won't let anyone, not even him, break me.
The doctor's office was unnervingly quiet, the only sound being the steady tick of the wall clock. Weak sunlight filtered through the gray curtains, casting a cold, somber atmosphere across the room. Sitting across from Nia, the doctor's gaze was full of compassion. Though the gravity of the news he was about to deliver was impossible to hide, his voice was low and deliberate.
We're deeply sorry, but you've been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. The good news is that we've caught it early, and with the right treatment plan, you have a strong chance of recovery.
Nia froze, the weight of his words sinking into her mind like stones, muffling all other sounds around her. Her vision blurred, her lips trembling as if trying to form words, though none would come. Her hands, gripping the diagnosis report on the desk, couldn't stop shaking. After a moment, she managed a small nod and forced a smile, but it was crooked and painful. Inside her, a storm of emotions swirled. Shock, and a faint, fragile relief that it wasn't too late. She drew a deep breath, her voice barely of a whisper, as though trying to convince herself.
I'll get through this. I have to.
She rose to her feet and left the office, her steps slow and deliberate. The sky outside was still blue, but to Nia, the world seemed irrevocably changed. Nia sat on the sofa in her apartment, the warm golden glow of the ceiling lamp casting soft shadows that did little to ease the tension tightening in her chest. In front of her sat a cold cup of tea, its surface still and lifeless, with the steam long since vanished. Her eyes were fixed on the table, her hands clasped tightly together in an attempt to stop their trembling, though the effort only made her anxiety more palpable. The sound of a key turning in the lock shattered the stillness. Her heart leaped, pounding as if signaling the moment she had been dreading. The door opened slowly and Alex walked in. He was still dressed in his usual dark suit. His tie loosened, the weariness of a long workday etched onto his face.
Hey!
Alex greeted, shrugging off his coat as he made his way to the wardrobe to hang it. Nia stood, hesitating briefly before speaking, her voice soft.
Alex, you're home. I've been waiting for you all afternoon.
He paused in the middle of the room, giving her a fleeting glance before responding, his tone dry.
Sorry, I had meetings all day. Is something wrong, Nia?
She drew a deep breath to steady herself, her hand instinctively smoothing her curls, as if to hide the unease rising within her. Her eyes glimmered with a mixture of hope and fear. Taking a step closer to him, she looked directly into his eyes, her voice gentle yet trembling.
Alex, I need to talk to you about something. I need you with me right now.
Alex raised an eyebrow, the faintest hint of surprise crossing his features. He didn't speak, waiting for her to continue. Nia faltered for a moment, her gaze locked on his expression, searching for a glimmer of reassurance. Finally, she lowered her voice, each word heavy with the weight of her burden.
Today, I got my results from the doctor. I have breast cancer, Alex.
The room fell into an oppressive silence, the ticking of the wall clock growing louder, almost deafening. Alex stood still, his eyes fixed on her, though his expression remained unreadable, as if he hadn't fully processed her words.
Cancer?
He repeated, his voice dropping, his brow furrowing slightly.
Breast cancer?
Nia confirmed, her voice cracking.
The doctor said they caught it early, but I'll need treatment. Chemotherapy, surgery. Everything. I know it's going to be hard, but I can't face this alone.
She stepped closer, her trembling hands reaching for his. He flinched slightly, but didn't pull away, her desperate gaze locking onto his.
Alex, I need you. We promised we'd always be there for each other, didn't we? I'm not asking for much. Just your support. I can't do this without you.
Alex gently pulled his hands back, taking a step away. His eyes shifted, avoiding hers, as though seeking refuge from the intensity of the moment. He sighed deeply, bowing his head, his voice emerging low and hesitant.
Nia, I don't know what to say. This is a lot. My work. It's at a critical stage right now. And this. So you're saying I'm a burden?
Nia's voice rose, sharp with hurt, though she quickly swallowed the rising tide of emotion. Her tone softened, but the ache remained.
Alex, I'm not asking you to do everything. I just need to know you'll be here. Please. Just stay with me.
Alex remained silent, his hands clenched at his sides, as if struggling with an internal battle. At last, he looked up at her, but there was no comfort in his gaze.
You have to understand,
he said, his voice hollow.
I don't know if I can balance everything. Maybe you should find someone who can help you better than I can right now.
His words cut through her like a blade. Nia stood frozen, her eyes wide, her lips quivering as no sound escaped them. She stepped back, her movements slow and deliberate, before turning away, unwilling to let him see the tears streaming down her face. Alex stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the floor, gaze empty, but his mind in turmoil, a chaotic tangle of emotions. He blinked a few times, desperately searching for the right words, but nothing clear enough made its way past his parched lips. After several suffocating seconds of silence, Alex turned slowly and walked toward the large window. He stood there, hands buried deep in his pockets, staring out at the city beyond. The lights from the skyscrapers glittered against the glass, forming a hazy barrier between him and reality. Alex exhaled, his shoulders sagging slightly under the weight of an invisible burden. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but devoid of emotion.
I can't walk away from work right now, Nia. You know that. You know how many years, how much effort I've put into reaching this point. Everything I've done, it's been for us, for a better life. I can't just throw it all away because of one problem.
He paused, searching for gentler words, but finished with a statement that cut deeper than he intended.
One problem you'll have to face on your own.
Nia looked at him, her tear-filled eyes brimming with disappointment, too profound to hide. Her voice, though soft and trembling, carried the weight of her heartbreak.
I don't need money, Alex. I don't need a fancy apartment, a luxurious life, or any of the titles you've earned. I need you, just you. Don't you understand? I need you, just you. Don't you understand? I need someone here with me right now.
Alex slowly turned his head, his eyes flickering briefly with confusion. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but closed it again. A moment later, he shrugged. His face returned to a cold indifference, as though her words hadn't reached him at all.
You don't get it, Nia. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for us. But I can't let emotions interfere with everything I've built. I can't let them ruin what I've worked so hard to achieve.
Nia held her breath, her hands clenched tightly together. Her voice cracked, but the anger and pain she had been suppressing finally broke free.
So what you're telling me is that I'm a burden, that everything you've accomplished is more important than being here for me. You're choosing your job, your career, over the person you promised to love, to stand by no matter what.
Alex closed his eyes for a brief moment, as though each word was a sharp blade cutting into him. But when he opened them again, the icy wall in his gaze remained, impenetrable.
I don't want to argue, Nia,
he said, his tone dry and resolute.
I can't.
Those words hit Nia like an explosion, reverberating in the hollow space inside her chest. She stood motionless, tears finally spilling over her cheeks, but she didn't say another word. She knew that no amount of pleading could move Alex now. In the oppressive silence of the apartment, the only sound was Alex's footsteps as he moved to the bedroom to pack. The suitcase lay open on the bed, and he methodically placed his belongings inside with a mechanical precision, completely devoid of emotion. He didn't speak, offering no explanations, no comfort. Nia stood in the doorway, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to say something, to shout, to beg him to stay, but her lips refused to form the words. The tears streamed down her pale, weary face in quiet surrender.
Alex,
She whispered, her voice so faint that even she could barely hear it. The sharp click of the suitcase zipper pierced the stillness, the sound cold and final. Alex straightened, pulling the suitcase off the bed and walking out into the living room, without so much as a glance at Nia. As he passed her, the air between them seemed to freeze, the distance more than just a few steps. An unbridgeable chasm had opened between them. He stopped at the door, his hand resting on the handle. For a brief second, hesitation flickered across his face, but then he sighed deeply and turned to look at her. His voice was low, almost a whisper.
you'll be okay. You're strong, Nia. I'm sorry.
But to Nia, those words were not the regret she longed for. They were a farewell. Gentle, yet unbearably painful, Alex opened the door and stepped out. The sound of the door closing behind him echoed through the apartment, hollow and final, slicing through the fragile silence like a blade. Nia stood alone in the living room, the warm yellow light above, only amplifying her solitude. She lowered her head, her trembling hands reaching for the unfinished painting on the table. The vibrant strokes of color on the canvas blurred as her tears fell onto it, staining the artwork with the weight of her sorrow. She whispered, her voice so small it barely existed.
I needed you, but you didn't choose me.
Clutching the painting to her chest, Nia stood motionless, as if trying to hold on to the last remnants of a love she had once believed would last forever. The light streaming through the large window of the apartment bathed the living room in a soft golden hue of sunset. Nia stood there, motionless in the empty space. The once familiar room now felt foreign, as though every ounce of warmth had vanished with Alex's departure. Her face turned toward the light, her red-rimmed eyes reflecting the depth of her pain. Yet, deep within that gaze, a faint glimmer of determination remained. A single tear traced its way down her cheek, but Nia made no effort to wipe it away. She let it fall, an acceptance of her sorrow, but not a surrender to it.
You can leave, Alex.
She whispered, her voice low but resolute.
But I won't let this pain define my life.
She turned, her hands moving slowly to rest on the table where her unfinished painting lay. The streaks of paint, bright and dark, bled together like the fractured pieces of her own soul. Lifting the incomplete canvas, Nia placed it carefully on the easel in the corner of the room. She stood there for a moment, her eyes fixed on the painting as though searching for something deeper within herself. Picking up a paintbrush long dried of color, Nia dipped it into the palette. This time, instead of her usual soft, deliberate strokes, she painted with bold, decisive movements. Red, orange, and bright yellow began to emerge, blending into the darker hues already on the canvas.
I will fight,
Nia said, her voice louder now, a declaration both to herself and to the silence.
I will keep going.
Her hand moved with purpose, each brushstroke infused with the strength of release. Every sweep of the brush was an answer to her pain, a proclamation that she would not be imprisoned by loss. The golden light of the sunset gave way to the deep blues of night, but within the apartment, the glow of the lamp near the easel illuminated Nia's face. Tears still glistened on her cheeks, but a faint smile played on her lips, a fragile flicker of hope beginning to take root. Nia lowered her gaze to the painting as it neared completion, her eyes brimming with determination. She wasn't just finishing a canvas, she was painting a new future for herself. The golden rays of sunset streamed through the large apartment window, casting a soft glow over the living room. Nia stood silently in the emptiness, the once familiar space now feeling foreign, stripped of its warmth, as though Alex had taken it with him when he left. Her face turned toward the fading light, her red-rimmed eyes reflecting the weight of her sorrow. Yet deep within them, a faint glimmer of determination lingered. A single tear traced its way down her cheek, but she didn't raise a hand to wipe it away. She let it fall, an acceptance or pain, but not a surrender to it.
You can walk away, Alex.
She whispered, her voice soft yet firm.
But I won't let this pain define my life.
Turning away, her hands rested on the table where her unfinished painting lay. The streaks of paint, bright and dark, bled together, a chaotic reflection of her fractured soul. Gently, she lifted the incomplete canvas and placed it on the easel in the corner. She stood for a moment, staring at the painting, as if searching for answers within herself. She picked up a paintbrush, its bristles stiff with dried color, and dipped it into the palette. This time, her strokes were bold and deliberate, unlike the careful softness she once favored. Reds, oranges, and bright yellows began to streak across the canvas, blending into the shadows that already dominated it.
I will fight,
Nia said, her voice louder now, a declaration that pierced through the stillness.
I will keep going.
Her hand moved with purpose, every brushstroke a rebellion against despair, a refusal to be defeated. Each movement was an answer to her pain, a proclamation that she would not be held captive by loss. The scene shifted. The pale, sterile light of the hospital consumed everything. The rhythmic beeping of machines filled the silence, punctuated by the hushed footsteps of nurses moving through the hallways. The faint rustle of paper, as doctors scribbled notes, mingled with the occasional sighs of nearby patients, creating a somber symphony in a place where life and death converged. Nia sat in a chemotherapy chair in the corner of the treatment room, the cold leather offering no comfort. Beside her, an IV pole stood like a sentinel, its clear liquid dripping steadily through a tube and into her frail arm. Her skin was pallid, her veins pronounced, her trembling hands gripping the chair's armrests, as though seeking stability amidst the storm of pain spreading through her body. She closed her eyes, trying to regulate her breathing, but the relentless nausea gnawed at her. Waves of discomfort and fatigue washed over her, suffocating her not only physically, but emotionally. It felt as though her own body had turned against her, each cell a battlefield where she had to fight tirelessly. In the silence, her inner voice whispered, a faint mantra to keep herself anchored.
I can't give up. I have to live, not just for myself, but for everything I've yet to finish. The paintings I haven't completed. The dreams I haven't fully brought to life. If I let go now, who will tell my story?
Her eyes fluttered open, glinting with a fragile spark of resolve. The pain was still there, a smoldering fire beneath her skin, but she refused to let it extinguish her hope. Each day at the hospital was a new battle. The chemotherapy room became a place she knew too well, but never grew less afraid of. Every time a nurse gently inserted the needle into her vein, Nia gripped her hands tighter, as if clinging to a resolve would keep her spirit intact. There were days she felt like she was unraveling. The chemotherapy didn't just steal her hair, each strand falling onto the pillow a cruel reminder. It drained her strength. The pounding headaches and unrelenting waves of nausea left her longing to collapse, to escape the relentless agony. But even in those moments, Nia forced herself to find a reason to keep going. One particularly grueling session left her on the brink of tears, the pain almost unbearable. Then, an image flickered in her mind. The unfinished painting still waiting for her at home.
I promised myself I'd finish it,
she thought, her eyes closed, tears slipping free, not from the pain, but from the sudden, overwhelming yearning to live. Among the grueling days, moments of solace emerged, small and fleeting, but significant. An elderly woman in the chair beside her often offered a gentle smile, her frail hands gripping her armrests just as tightly.
You're young,
the woman said one day, her voice kind but firm.
You'll get through this. I thought I couldn't, but look at me. I'm still here, fighting like everyone else.
It wasn't a miracle cure, But to Nia, those words were like a small candle flickering in the darkness of her soul. On another day, as a nurse checked on her, Nia whispered, her voice raspy with exhaustion.
"How much longer will this last?"
The nurse gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze.
"You're halfway there,"
she said with a soft smile.
"You're doing so well. Keep going."
Those words, simple yet sincere, became a lifeline. They pushed Nia to grit her teeth and endure. At the end of another draining session, Nia left the hospital with heavy steps. A scarf wrapped around her head hid the absence of her hair, but beneath it, her heart carried a strange, fierce determination. She glanced up at the gray sky overhead, her hand tightening into a fist. She whispered to herself, her words a quiet vow.
"I will live. I will fight. Not just to survive, but to finish what I've started. Each day is a chance to reclaim my strength and tell my story."
Nia kept walking, her eyes fixed forward. The pain remained, a constant companion, but now it was more than an affliction. It was a reminder of her will to endure. In the small living room, the dim light from a desk lamp cast a soft glow over the neatly stacked paintings on the table. Nia sat on an old wooden chair, her hands carefully wrapping each painting in protective paper, her movements slow and deliberate. Her face reflected a mix of emotions, a faint sadness, as if she were saying goodbye to a part of herself, yet also a quiet determination. Knowing this was something she had to do, she paused for a moment, her gaze lingering on the paintings. Each piece told a story, a fragment of her soul poured onto the canvas. Vibrant colors on stretched fabric spoke of her hopes, her dreams, and the pain she had endured. Some paintings captured the beauty of nature, fields of vivid flowers, the fierce rhythm of crashing waves, while others were abstract, the colors blending together in a complex tapestry of emotions. She whispered softly, as if to herself,
"Each painting is a piece of me, and they'll help me keep fighting. I'm not just selling them, I'm sharing my story."
Nia picked up a particular painting, her favorite, a golden sunset where sunlight filtered through the branches of trees, radiating warmth and peace. She stared at it for one last moment, her hands trembling slightly as she wrapped it carefully in paper. That weekend, Nia brought her paintings to an outdoor art market. The air was vibrant with color, the stalls lined up like rows of dreams on display. Each booth carried its own unique story, yet Nia couldn't shake the nervousness as she set up her table and arranged her work. She stood behind her booth, smoothing the paintings with light touches to ensure they were perfectly displayed. The gentle breeze carried the aroma of roasted coffee from a nearby stand, but her thoughts were clouded by doubt.
Will anyone see their worth? Will anyone want to take them home?
The first hours crawled by. A few passers-by stopped to glance at her paintings, offering polite smiles before moving on. Then a middle-aged woman with soft, curly brown hair paused at Nia's booth. The woman studied the paintings closely, her eyes wide with admiration. She stopped in front of the golden sunset painting Nia had reluctantly brought.
"This is beautiful,"
the woman said, her voice tinged with wonder.
"The colors, they make me feel like I'm standing in a place where hope is alive."
Nia smiled faintly, her heart beating a little faster. She stepped closer, her voice gentle but sincere.
"Thank you. I painted them to remind myself that even in the darkest times, light is always there. Sometimes, we just need to look toward the sun."
The woman nodded, her expression thoughtful, as though Nia's words had struck a chord deep within. She looked back at the painting and said warmly,
"Maybe I need this. It reminds me that hope is still there, even when I've forgotten to look in the right direction."
When the woman handed over the money, Nia bowed her head in gratitude, her eyes shimmering with a quiet joy. She knew she hadn't just sold a painting. She knew she hadn't just sold a painting. She had shared her story, her spirit, with someone who understood. By the end of the day, Nia had sold several paintings. Each time she handed one over to a customer, she offered a small smile, a silent thank you, not just for their support, but for choosing to take a piece of her story into their lives. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Nia began packing up her booth. Her hands were as meticulous as they had been that morning. Though her body ached from the long day, she felt a lightness she hadn't known in a while. The money she had earned would help cover part of her medical bills. But more importantly, it had reaffirmed her belief that her art was a bridge, connecting her to the world even as her body waged its silent battle. Walking home, Nia moved slowly, an empty bag at her side, but her heart was far from empty. She looked up at the sky, where the last hues of the sunset were fading into night, and whispered to herself,
I did it today. Tomorrow, I'll keep going. Art will always be the light that guides me through it all.
Nia walked slowly along the narrow path leading home, the soft glow of streetlights casting a warm, rare sense of tranquility over her shadow amidst the stormy days of her life. Though her legs ached after a long day, her heart felt lighter, as if buoyed by the moments of connection she'd experienced at the art market. Just as she reached for the doorknob of her apartment, the ringing of her phone broke the quiet. Digging through her bag, she saw a name she hadn't seen in what felt like forever. Aisha. A faint smile touched Nia's lips, a mix of surprise and emotion washing over her. In that instant, memories of her old friend, who had stood by her side through the earliest, hardest days of her career, came rushing back like a warm breeze. She answered, her voice steady but tinged with affection.
Nia, it's me.
Aisha's familiar voice came through, full of warmth and urgency.
I heard what happened. We need to meet. Tomorrow, there's something I need to do for you.
Those words felt like a bridge, a connection pulling Nia toward a new chapter, one where she might find not just help, but the priceless bond of companionship. The late afternoon light filtered softly through the thin curtains of Nia's apartment, filling the small space with a golden glow. On her desk, new paintings stood propped up on their easels, vibrant but incomplete. Nia sat on her worn sofa, a notebook resting on her lap. Her pen moved slowly across the page, capturing fragments of emotion lingering from her time at the art market. The sharp ring of the doorbell broke her reverie. Her heart quickened as she stood and walked to the door. Opening it, she was greeted by a face she had missed for far too long. Aisha. Aisha stepped inside with a purposeful stride, her expression marked by both concern and determination. Her sharp business suit and elegant leather bag radiated success, but her face betrayed a deep, unguarded emotion.
Nia.
Aisha began, her voice low but full of feeling.
Why didn't you tell me sooner?
Nia offered a small, sheepish smile and ushered her friend inside, shutting the door behind her.
I didn't want to bother you. I know how busy you are with work, and I thought I could handle it on my own.
Setting her bag on the table, Aisha sighed and gently squeezed Nia's shoulder.
You're as stubborn as ever, Nia. You always have been. But this isn't something you can face alone.
Her eyes swept across the room, pausing on the unfinished paintings.
You're still painting. Thank God you haven't given up on your art, but...
Aisha turned back, her gaze softening as her voice dropped.
Why didn't you tell me about your illness? I had to hear about it from someone else. Did you really think I wouldn't want to help?
Nia lowered her head, her hands clasping tightly together.
I know you'd always be there for me, Aisha, but honestly, I didn't want to be a burden. I've been selling my paintings, doing everything I can to manage. And I thought...
Her voice faltered, her emotions spilling over.
I thought Alex would stay, but he left.
Aisha fell silent for a moment before sitting down beside her. Her expression shifted to one of unwavering resolve.
You can't keep putting your faith in someone like Alex, Nia. You have to see that he doesn't deserve forgiveness. all he's done is prove that he was never the kind of man who could stand by you when it mattered most.
Tears welled in Nia's eyes as she looked at her friend.
I'm not hoping for him to come back, Aisha. I don't understand why it still hurts so much.
Aisha reached out and took Nia's hand in hers.
Pain is unavoidable, Nia, but you're one of the strongest people I know. You've been fighting from the moment I met you. You've faced so many obstacles and made it through every single one. And now you'll get through this too, but not alone.
Opening her bag, Aisha pulled out an envelope and placed it in Nia's trembling hands.
This is for you. Don't refuse it and don't overthink it. Consider it an investment in your future, in the art the world needs to see.
Nia stared at the envelope, her hands shaking.
Aisha, I can't accept this.
Aisha interrupted firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument.
This isn't charity. This is one friend helping another. You were there for me when I needed you most, Nia. Don't forget that.
Aisha's gaze softened as she looked into Nia's tear-filled eyes, her tone becoming both stern and tender.
And listen to me, Nia. Don't hold on to even the smallest hope that Alex will come back. He left you when you needed him the most. You have to remember that. You don't need anyone who makes you feel like you're not enough. You deserve so much more.
Tears streamed down Nia's cheeks, but this time, they weren't tears of despair. They were of gratitude. She nodded, her voice trembling, but filled with newfound resolve.
You're right, Aisha. I can't rely on Alex. But because of you, I know I still have people who truly care about me. I won't give up. I won't give up. I'll keep fighting.
Aisha smiled, her eyes warm and proud. She looked at Nia the way a sister might, with a deep, abiding love.
That's the Nia I know. You'll make it. And whenever you need me, I'll be here.
The two sat together in the cozy apartment, the golden light from the lamp casting a warm glow over the room. In that moment, Nia felt the weight of loneliness lift just a little. She knew the road ahead would still be long and filled with challenges, but she also knew she wasn't walking it alone. With Aisha's unwavering support, both emotional and practical, Nia had one more reason to keep moving forward, to live and to finish the dreams she had yet to complete. As Nia found strength in her art and the warmth of friendship, her world began to brighten with glimmers of newfound hope. But far away, in a starkly different place, Alex Bennett was stepping into the heart of a storm. In Alex's high-rise office, the cold white light from the ceiling cast an unforgiving glow that couldn't dispel the darkness clouding his mind. What was once a symbol of power and control had devolved into a reflection of chaos. His meticulously organized desk was now cluttered with scattered reports, stark red warnings stamped across them, and a computer screen displaying plunging numbers that felt like nails in the coffin of his pride. Alex stood before the desk, his eyes locked on the stock chart spiraling downward. Each jagged line was a hammer blow to his ego. His hands gripped the edges of the chair so tightly, his knuckles turned white, as if the physical strain could somehow contain the fury rising within him.
How did this happen?
He muttered, his voice barely audible but loud enough to fill the oppressive silence.
Why didn't anyone warn me?
The anger ignited, spreading like wildfire. Alex slammed his hands against the desk, the loud thud reverberating through the empty office. Papers scattered, fluttering to the floor, but the chaos around him did little to quell the tempest inside. His voice, cold and sharp, pierced the air.
What has Victor been doing behind my back? Does he really think he can undermine me, destroy everything I've built?
Collapsing into his chair, Alex's hands shook as he grabbed the mouse and frantically opened files on his computer. His eyes skimmed through emails and recent transactions, piecing together fragments of evidence. One revelation hit after another, each one like a brutal punch to the gut. Victor hadn't just manipulated stocks. He'd used the company's contracts to mask illicit dealings, dragging the entire enterprise into a vortex of legal and financial peril. Alex felt cornered, trapped with no clear way out.
Damn it!
He roared, slamming a fist onto the desk. He leaned forward, his breathing heavy, as though the very air in the room had thinned. His thoughts raced, searching desperately for a solution, but bitterness consumed him. He couldn't fathom how someone he'd trusted for years could betray him so completely, pushing everything he'd worked for to the brink of collapse. The next morning, Alex walked briskly out of his office, his footsteps echoing down the long hallway. But the vibrant energy that once defined the space was gone. The adjacent offices were eerily empty, the clean desks devoid of personal touches. Some spaces were stripped bare, as though their occupants had left in a hurry, uninterested in leaving behind even a trace of themselves. Alex made his way to the conference room, expecting to find his senior staff, those he had counted on to stay loyal. Instead, he was greeted by a handful of unfamiliar faces, scattered around the large table. Their eyes avoided his, their expressions betraying indifference. Scanning the room, Alex's face hardened, his initial confusion morphing into anger. His voice, edged with frustration, cut through the awkward silence.
"Where is everyone? The people who've worked here for years. Where are they?"
A young assistant lowered his head, avoiding Alex's piercing gaze. After a hesitant pause, he answered,
"Mr. Bennett, many of them left over the past few months. They said they didn't have a reason to stay. Some felt the company wasn't what it used to be."
The assistant's words struck like a dagger, slicing through Alex's defenses. He clenched his fists, swallowing the lump rising in his throat. Without a word, Alex stormed out of the conference room, his steps taking him to the offices that had once belonged to his closest allies. At the end of the hall, he stopped in his tracks. Karen, a longtime employee who had been with him since the company's inception, was packing up her belongings into a small box.
"Karen?"
Alex called, his voice a mixture of disbelief and anger.
"You're leaving too? Why? You were one of the people I trusted most. You know I need everyone right now."
Karen looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and disappointment. She set the stack of papers in her hands down and faced him. Her voice was steady, but there was no fear or hesitation in her tone.
"Mr. Bennett, I've been here for over a decade, but not once have I felt like you really listened to us. We tried to warn you about Victor, about the risks the company was taking, but you ignored it all. Because to you, we were just tools to help you chase your ambitions."
Alex opened his mouth to protest, but Karen raised a hand, stopping him. Her voice softened slightly, though it remained firm.
"And now you're surprised. You think people would stay and sacrifice themselves after what Victor did to you. They left because they no longer felt they had value here."
Alex stood frozen, his eyes flickering with uncertainty, but no words came out. Karen's tone turned sharper, almost biting.
"Maybe you don't need them, but I refuse to keep working for someone who sees their employees as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet."
Lifting her box, Karen walked past Alex without a backward glance. Alex remained rooted in place, the empty hallway around him feeling like a chasm. In that moment, he couldn't shake the thought.
Where did I go wrong? Was it Victor who betrayed me, or was it me who drove everyone away?
Back in his office, Alex sank into his chair, staring blankly at the scattered papers on his desk. The numbers on the reports no longer mattered. He realized he had lost something far more significant than money or power. He had lost the trust of those who had once believed in him, the loyalty of people he had taken for granted. A suffocating sense of loneliness enveloped Alex. For the first time in his life, he understood that this collapse wasn't just Victor's doing. It was his own. He had been so consumed by ambition that he had forgotten the values worth holding on to. And now, he was left with nothing but the empty echoes of his own mistakes. Alex sat in his office, the stacks of documents before him forming a dense wall between him and the truth he could no longer ignore. The room was so quiet that the ticking of the wall clock echoed in his ears, each tick urging him to find an answer. His eyes fixated on an old contract, its numbers and suspicious payments standing out like glaring red flags he couldn't unsee. Page after page, Alex meticulously scrutinized every line of text and figure. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up another contract, one signed by Victor Castillo. The payment listed was astronomical, transferred to a small, nondescript company overseas. Marking each discrepancy with a pen, Alex quickly opened more related documents, his mind racing to connect the dots. A financial advisor entered the room, placing a thick folder on the desk. His voice carried a mix of worry and urgency.
Mr. Bennett, these transactions aren't just irregular. If this comes to light, you'll be the one held accountable. Every signature on these documents belongs to you.
Alex looked up, his expression darkening, his jaw tightening so much that his face seemed carved from stone. His fingers clenched around the edges of the folder, his knuckles whitening. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, trembling with fury and bitter disbelief.
Victor didn't just betray me. He's destroying this entire company. He used my trust to turn it into a facade for his criminal operations.
Rising abruptly, Alex pushed his chair back with a sharp scrape. His footsteps thundered across the floor as he stormed toward his desk, hurling the folder onto the surface. Papers flew into disarray, mirroring the chaos consuming his mind.
How many more contracts like this?
Alex demanded, his voice as sharp as a blade.
We're still auditing, but many of these deals go back years. Victor orchestrated this systematically. Worse, if anyone investigates, your name is on every single one of those documents.
The words hit Alex like a dagger to the chest. His anger boiled over, but beneath it, a cold, creeping fear began to take hold. As night fell, Alex stood alone in his expansive office. The room, once a vibrant hub of energy and ambition, now felt hollow and oppressive. The only light came from his computer screen, glowing with ominous red numbers that burrowed into his mind like unrelenting reminders of the catastrophe at hand. He walked slowly to the floor, to ceiling window, gazing out at the city lights flickering like fragile candles in the dark. But their beauty could not pierce the shadow enveloping his thoughts. Alex stared down at the streets below, where cars flowed endlessly like veins of a living city. Yet the world outside felt impossibly distant, a place he no longer belonged. His lips moved, barely forming the words. His lips moved, barely forming the words his thoughts whispered.
If I expose Victor, I'll lose everything. My reputation, my career, even the company I've spent my life building. But if I do nothing...
Alex paused, drawing a deep, shuddering breath before continuing, his voice dropping to a strained murmur, each word heavy with anguish.
I'll lose myself. I won't be able to look in the mirror without hating what I see.
He turned back, his eyes falling on the scattered documents across his desk. Those papers, chaotic and damning, contained undeniable proof. Victor hadn't just betrayed him. He was dragging the company into a pit from which there might be no return. Vivid images flashed in Alex's mind. Police raids at the office, endless investigations, and worst of all, his own face plastered across headlines with mocking, damning captions.
Bennett, the fraud,
he muttered bitterly, his voice catching in his throat, his fists clenched involuntarily, his fingers digging into his palms. Striding back to his desk, he picked up a contract, his eyes locking onto the signatures, Victor's name sitting smugly beside his own. A mix of betrayal and self-loathing churned within him. He roared, his voice reverberating through the empty office.
Victor, you used me, you deceived me, and now you're destroying everything I've built.
The words echoed into the silence, unanswered, but for Alex, they were a release, a vent for the fury and frustration that had been boiling over for days. He flung the contract onto the desk, the pages scattering again, but this time his gaze lingered on them, not with helplessness, but with grim resolve. Placing both hands firmly on the desk, Alex leaned over the documents, his mind spinning with questions.
How do I fix this? How do I face the consequences? And most importantly, do I have the courage to do what's right?
His voice broke the silence once more, softer now, laced with anguish rather than anger.
If I do this, I'll lose everything. Everything I've worked so hard to build. But if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life trapped in lies, a prisoner of my own shame.
Raising his head, Alex's gaze met the faint reflection of his face in the darkened window. For a moment, he imagined himself looking into a mirror, seeing only contempt and regret. Staring back, his next words were quieter still, but carried a weight of newfound determination.
I can't let that happen. I can't go on like this. I don't just need to save the company. I need to save myself.
After a long silence, Alex straightened. He turned toward the window again, but this time his eyes were steady, unflinching. The storm of indecision inside him had stilled, replaced by a resolute calm.
I won't let him ruin my life any further. He has to pay. And if I lose everything, it will be because I chose to do the right thing.
He walked to his desk, picking up the phone. His fingers dialed the number of a legal advisor. Fear still lingered in his chest, but it no longer paralyzed him. Alex had made his decision, and he knew it was the only way forward. Looking out at the city lights one last time, Alex felt a flicker of something he hadn't in days. Clarity. Though the path ahead was fraught with challenges for the first time, he felt a semblance of peace, and as Alex stood at the crossroads of his life, ready to face the fallout and reclaim his honor, a new truth was quietly unraveling elsewhere. At Nia's modest apartment, Aisha was poring over remnants of Naya's past. The quiet was broken only by the soft rustle of papers as Aisha stumbled upon an old document, one containing a secret even she couldn't have anticipated. In the dim light of the late afternoon, Nia's small apartment was cloaked in a heavy silence. The soft rustle of papers filled the air as Aisha, seated next to a box of old documents, sifted through its contents with a mix of curiosity and caution. The box was a repository of Nia's memories, old paintings, clumsy sketches from her early artistic days, and neatly folded invoices. Then, unexpectedly, a pale yellow folder appeared at the bottom of the box. Aisha paused, her brows furrowing as she scanned the text on the pages. It was an old financial agreement, its terms outlining a significant transfer of funds to Alex Bennett's company. Her grip tightened on the document, her eyes wide with shock and confusion.
Nia,
Aisha called out, her voice low but sharp.
Did you really do this? You gave all the money from your first paintings?
Ria, busy rearranging a stack of canvases nearby, froze mid-motion. Her hands hovered in the air before she slowly lowered them. Turning toward Aisha, her expression flickered with surprise, but her gaze quickly dropped to the floor.
Don't tell me it's true, Nia.
Aisha continued, stepping closer with the contract in hand.
You poured your heart into painting, into selling each and every one of those pieces. And you gave it all to Alex? Do you even know what he did with that money?
Nia lowered her head, her hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but steady as it broke the silence.
I trusted him, Aisha. I thought he would succeed. Alex had big dreams and I wanted to be part of them.
Aisha stared at her, emotion pooling in her eyes. The room fell quiet for a moment before she spoke again, her voice quivering with a mix of disbelief and pain.
But why, Nia? You've given too much. You sacrificed everything for him, and now he's abandoned you. Alex doesn't even remember what you gave up for him. How can you bear that?
Nia looked up, her eyes distant, as though peering through Aisha and into a memory long buried. Images flooded her mind. The first painting she sold, the joy of having enough money to support Alex, the naive pride in believing she was helping him achieve something extraordinary. She shook her head gently, as if trying to dispel those bittersweet memories. Her voice wavered, but remained honest.
I never thought he'd forget, Aisha. I believed we shared the same dream. But I never expected that one day I'd be the one who wasn't worth staying for.
Aisha sighed deeply and set the paper down on the table. She reached out, taking Nia's hand in hers, her tone a blend of empathy and sorrow.
You're worth so much more than this, Nia. You deserve respect, not this. If Alex can't see that, then you need to remind yourself your dream isn't for him.
That night, the apartment sank into stillness once more. Nia sat alone before an unfinished painting in the corner. The soft golden glow of her desk lamp illuminated the vivid colors on the canvas, but they seemed lifeless, stripped of the spirit they once held. She reached out, her trembling fingers tracing the outlines of the painting. Her eyes shimmered, though no tears fell, as if her pain had long since dried up inside her. Her voice was barely above a whisper, as if speaking to Aisha even though she was no longer there.
I didn't just lose money, Aisha. I lost my faith in him, I thought. We were building something together, but all I got in return was abandonment and cold indifference.
She lowered her head, wrapping her arms around her knees. Her breaths came unevenly, as though weighed down by the burden of reliving the past. The memories replayed in her mind like an endless reel. The pride of signing her first sponsorship agreement, the exhilaration of thinking she was helping Alex reach his dreams.
I helped him touch his dream,
she thought bitterly, the pain swelling in her chest.
And all I got back was betrayal.
Nia lifted her head, staring at the canvas before her. The bold strokes that once symbolized passion and determination now seemed meaningless. Every splash of color felt like a cruel reminder of the trust that had been shattered. Her voice cracked with despair as she whispered to herself,
Can I even keep painting? Can I find inspiration again when everything feels broken?
Her eyes closed, and this time, a single tear escaped, tracing a silent path down her cheek before falling onto the canvas. The droplet mingled with the vibrant colors, a poignant reminder that her art, a pointless symbol of hope, had become a witness to her pain. Yet, from deep within her anguish, a faint spark flickered. Placing a hand over her heart, she felt the fragile but persistent rhythm of her heartbeat. She drew a deep breath, as though pulling strength from the sheer fact of her survival.
I can't let this destroy me,
she murmured, her voice soft but resolute.
I've survived harder days than this, and I won't let Alex take my dreams from me ever again.
In the stillness of the room, Nia's paintbrush moved once more. Bold, decisive strokes emerged on the canvas, each one carrying the weight of her pain and the strength of her will to rise above it. Slowly, the unfinished painting transformed into something new, an expression of resilience, a story of rebirth. When the time came, that very painting, vibrant and full of life, became the centerpiece of a charity auction. The event buzzed with energy, the chandeliers casting dazzling light over the assembled crowd. Nia stood quietly, unaware of a pair of eyes watching her from across the room. Alex Bennett had just stepped through the doors, his gaze fixed on her painting. In the sea of people and light, his face was unreadable, but his presence carried the weight of a confrontation long overdue. The grand hall of the charity auction was bathed in a soft golden light, reflecting off the crystal chandeliers that adorned the ceiling. Nia's paintings were displayed along the walls with quiet reverence, each piece framed in fine wood, radiating a raw beauty that was both powerful and deeply emotional. Guests strolled between the auction tables, glasses of wine in hand, their murmured conversations creating a lively yet dignified atmosphere. At the center of the room, Nia stood beside a large painting, the standout piece of her collection. The artwork was a vivid interplay of warm and cool tones, a visual battle between pain and the desire to overcome. Her eyes shone with a mixture of pride and relief. These were not just paintings on display, they were fragments of her story, told through every brushstroke. Alex entered the hall, his dark suit immaculate, though it couldn't mask the exhaustion etched onto his face. His gaze swept across the crowd until it landed on Nia. She stood there, her slender frame exuding resilience, a figure he couldn't look away from. With heavy steps, Alex made his way toward her, each stride carrying the weight of his past mistakes. As the distance between them narrowed, he felt his heartbeat quicken, but he forced himself to remain composed. Nia turned, her eyes meeting his. For a fleeting moment, time seemed to stand still. Surprise flickered across her face before it was quickly replaced by a calm, almost cold indifference.
Alex,
Nia said, her voice light but laced with caution. Alex stopped before her, his eyes brimming with emotion. Yet the first words he spoke were an unexpected plea.
Nia, I know I don't deserve this. I know I have no right to stand in front of you and ask for anything.
Nia crossed her arms over her chest, her brows furrowing slightly.
But you're doing it anyway, aren't you? You're here after everything that's happened.
Alex lowered his head, as if each of her words struck a direct blow to his pride. His voice dropped, heavy with an unfamiliar desperation.
Victor destroyed everything, Nia. He took advantage of my trust and turned the company I built into a front for his dirty dealings. I'm trying to fix it, but I can't do this alone.
Nia studied him, her gaze unwavering, though her voice remained cold.
I gave you everything, Alex. Everything. I trusted you with my faith, my money, my future. And you walked away when I needed you most. Why should I help you now? Why should I help you now? Why should I trust you again?
Alex's fists clenched, his anguish visible as he looked up to meet her eyes.
You don't have to trust me, Nia. I don't expect your forgiveness. But I have no one else. You're the only person who could possibly understand. Understand what this feels like. Understand you.
Nia's laugh was bitter, devoid of humor.
You think I could possibly understand you, Alex? I don't think so. I'm not the one who walks away when things get hard. I stood by you. I believed in you. And what did you do with everything I gave you?
Alex remained silent, as if her words had stripped him of every excuse he might have offered. Finally, he took a deep, shaky breath, his voice breaking with regret.
You're right. I was wrong. So wrong I can't even begin to make it right. But I'm trying, Nia. I can't change the past, but I want to fix the future. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you. No, I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you. Not for me, but for what you once believed in.
Nia closed her eyes for a moment, as though wrestling with her own emotions. When she opened them again, her gaze was sharper, more resolute.
I've lost too much because of you, Alex. And now you're standing here asking me to help you, as if that could erase everything I've been through. No, it can't,
Alex admitted, his voice dropping to a near whisper.
But you can give me a chance to do the right thing, not for me. For yourself, to prove that everything you did wasn't in vain.
Nia stood still, his words echoing in her mind. She didn't answer immediately, instead turning to look at her painting. The piece, with its striking contrasts of color, seemed to mirror the conflict raging within her. After what felt like an eternity, she turned back to him, her eyes steely with determination.
I'm not making any promises, Alex. If I agree to help you, it's not for you, it's for me. I'll do this on my terms, and only this once.
Alex nodded, his expression a mixture of gratitude and relief.
That's all I'm asking, Nia. Thank you.
Nia didn't respond, her gaze lingering on him for a moment before she turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing amid the bustling event. Yet for him, it felt as though he had just emerged from an intense internal battle. This encounter marked a turning point, not only in Alex's journey but also in Nia's. It was a chance for both to confront the shattered fragments they had left behind and decide what they would make of them moving forward. The charity auction was drawing to a close, the once bustling grand hall now quieter as only a few small groups lingered in conversation. Nia and Alex stood in a corner of the room, where the soft glow of the lights fell over a painting she had poured her heart into. Though the atmosphere around them remained lively, the silence between them was heavy, weighted by the unspoken truths of their shared past. Alex's voice was low, the urgency in his eyes making it clear that what he was about to say was more than mere regret.
Ria, you need to understand. Victor isn't just a financial manipulator. He'll use any means necessary to achieve his goals, even if it means destroying other people's dreams.
Nia frowned, her gaze sharp as she studied him.
What do you mean? What he did to your company wasn't enough. What else do you know about Victor?
Alex sighed, gripping the edge of the nearby table as though he needed something to ground him before revealing the truth.
He didn't just manipulate stocks, Nia. Part of his scheme involved exploiting the art world, exhibitions, auctions, any platform he could use to launder money. He's been operating from the shadows, using his influence to twist the art market to his advantage.
Alex's words landed like a hammer blow. Nia froze, her eyes widening as memories she had long buried resurfaced, clawing their way back into her mind.
Victor Castillo,
she whispered, her voice so faint Alex had to lean in to catch it. But then, her tone shifted, sharp and cold, her eyes flashing with a mix of astonishment and fury.
He's the one who destroyed my first exhibition.
Alex's brow furrowed, confusion flickering across his face.
Your first exhibition? What are you talking about?
Nia didn't respond immediately. She turned away, her hands clenching tightly at her sides as though trying to steady herself against the storm of emotions rising within her.
That year,
she began, her voice bitter in a way Alex had never heard before.
I organized a small exhibition. It was the first time I dared to show my work to the world. I worked tirelessly, selling everything I had of value to make that dream a reality.
Alex opened his mouth, but Nia didn't let him interrupt.
But that exhibition, it never happened the way it was supposed to. The night before the opening, my paintings were destroyed. Some were slashed, the canvases torn apart. Frames were thrown into the street. When I arrived, all I found was a ruin.
Her voice broke slightly, her eyes shimmering with tears that didn't fall.
I couldn't understand why anyone would do that. Who would hate a small, struggling artist enough to destroy everything I had worked for?
She turned back to Alex, her gaze scorching.
And now you're telling me that Victor Castillo, the man you once trusted, manipulated the art world to launder his dirty money, that he could have been the one who destroyed my exhibition to cover his tracks?
Alex felt the air around them grow still, her accusation cutting deep, even though he wasn't directly responsible. But he knew. Somehow Victor had played a part.
Nia,
Alex began, his voice trembling.
I didn't know about this. I swear to you, I never imagined Victor would do something like this to you. You didn't know.
Nia interrupted, her voice icy and sharp.
But you knew what kind of man he was. You knew he used every trick in the book to get what he wanted. And you still kept him in your world, letting him ruin other people's lives.
Alex bowed his head, unable to form a response. The silence between them only thickened, the weight of her words pressing down on him. After a long pause, Nia spoke again, her voice calmer but no less cutting.
I didn't just lose an exhibition, Alex. I lost my faith in justice, in fairness. I had to pick myself up and rebuild everything after it was all destroyed. And now you want me to believe you're trying to fix things, that you're trying to stop the same man who wrecked my life?
Alex looked up, his eyes filled with desperation.
I understand you have no reason to trust me, Nia, but Victor has to be stopped. If you know anything about him, if you can help bring him down, I'm begging you, do it. Not for me, but for everyone else he's hurt.
Nia looked deep into Alex's eyes, her gaze sharp with doubt.
You're right. You don't deserve this. I gave you everything. My trust, my hope, even my finances. And in return, you left me when I needed you the most. Now you want me to believe this time will be different?
Alex didn't look away, even though every word felt like a knife cutting deeper into his soul. He nodded, his voice steady, filled with sincerity and regret.
No, I don't expect you to believe me, but you don't have to do this for me. Do it for what Victor took from you. Do it to stop him from hurting anyone else.
Nia stood motionless, her hands at her sides, as though she were trying to hold back the storm of emotions building inside her.
I lost everything because of Victor. My first exhibition, my first dream. He didn't just destroy my paintings. He shattered my faith in the world. How am I supposed to face him without letting those feelings take control?
Alex took a step closer, his eyes filled with both empathy and determination.
You can, Nia, because you're stronger than you realize. He tried to snuff out your light, but here you are, standing in your own exhibition, proving he failed. Now it's time to stop him. Now it's time to stop him. Now, just for the past, but for the future.
Nia stayed silent for a long moment, her expression shifting from anger to something more contemplative. Alex's words, though difficult to hear, stirred a sense of resolve within her. Something she had fought hard to build over the years. She took a deep breath, her hands clenching into fists.
I'll do this, but let's get one thing straight, Alex. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing it for everything I lost, and to make sure Victor never gets the chance to hurt anyone else again.
Alex nodded, his gaze softening with genuine gratitude.
Thank you, Nia. I owe you something I know I'll never be able to repay.
Nia let out a dry laugh, tinged with bitterness.
You owe me more than thanks, Alex. Just make sure we don't fail. We won't fail?
Alex said firmly, his voice low but resolute. Nia studied him for a long moment before turning her attention back to her painting. The vibrant hues on the canvas seemed to mirror the determination beginning to burn within her. This time, she would confront Victor, not as a victim, but as a survivor, and this time she would win. As the lights in the exhibition dimmed, a fierce determination burned brighter within Nia than ever before. She had made her choice, not just to stand up for herself, but to end the cycle of destruction Victor had left in his wake. But determination alone would not suffice. It was time to act. The next day, in a small cafe, Nia and Alex began crafting their plan. The table before them was crowded with documents, a laptop, and densely written notes. Together, they mapped out each step to gather evidence, every detail a small piece of the puzzle that could finally expose Victor Castillo. In the cramped room now filled with papers and files, the soft light of a desk lamp illuminated Nia's and Alex's tense faces. Financial records, invoices, and old contracts were spread across the table, each page carrying the hope that it might hold the key to taking Victor down. Alex picked up a file, his eyes scanning the text quickly, marking suspicious transactions with a red pen.
He's good at hiding,
Alex muttered, his voice low.
These transfers are meticulously disguised, but if you look closely, you'll notice patterns in the receiving accounts.
Nia frowned as she flipped through another file.
Why didn't anyone catch this sooner?
Alex looked up, bitterness flickering in his eyes.
Because no one dared to confront him. He didn't just manipulate finances. He silenced anyone who questioned him, myself included.
For a moment, Nia said nothing, her eyes fixed on the numbers on the page, as though they were telling her a story she needed to understand. Then, suddenly, she froze as a stack of old photos slipped out from the corner of a box.
What's this?
She asked, picking up one of the photos. The image showed a group of people gathered at an art exhibition. Nia's eyes immediately zeroed in on a familiar face in the background, a man with piercing, cold eyes standing amidst the crowd.
Victor,
she whispered, her voice catching in her throat.
He was there, at my first exhibition. I remember those eyes.
Alex leaned closer, inspecting the photo.
Are you sure?
Nia nodded, clutching the photo tightly.
I could never forget. Those were the eyes of someone watching, not out of admiration for the art, but because he was looking for something to destroy.
Alex placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his voice serious.
This could be important. If we can prove Victor used that event to launder money or cover his tracks, it could change everything.
Nina didn't respond, her gaze locked on the photo. It wasn't just a piece of evidence. It was a painful reminder of what she had lost and why she had to fight for justice. Not long after, while sifting through more documents, Alex received a call from one of his contacts within Victor's network. He stepped out of the room, his voice low and urgent.
What is it? Do you have anything new?
The voice on the other end was shaky, riddled with anxiety.
Victor is preparing for his biggest transaction yet, a deal that could wipe out all traces of his operations. It's happening tomorrow.
Alex went silent for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself.
You're certain? Absolutely. This is the last chance to catch him. If you miss it, he'll disappear without leaving a trace. Got it. Thank you.
Alex ended the call and returned to the room, his expression graver than ever. Nia immediately noticed the change in his demeanor.
What's going on, Alex? He's making his move.
Alex said, his voice heavy with the weight of the news.
Victor's planning his biggest transaction tomorrow. If we don't stop him, everything will be lost.
Nina stood abruptly, grabbing a file from the table. Her eyes burned with determination, fiercer than Alex had ever seen.
Then we act now. I'm not letting him get away this time.
Alex nodded, his tone resolute.
I agree. We'll plan every detail, and this time we won't let him slip through our fingers.
They worked tirelessly through the night. Documents, photos, and other pieces of evidence were organized meticulously, each piece scrutinized to ensure nothing was overlooked. Despite her exhaustion, Nia remained focused. To her, this wasn't just a task. It was a chance to reclaim what had been stolen from her. From across the table, Alex watched her, a mix of respect and guilt weighing heavily on him.
Nia,
he said softly, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic gentleness.
Thank you for doing this. I know I don't deserve your help.
Without looking up, Nia continued flipping through the documents, her tone steady but firm.
I'm not doing this for you, Alex. I'm doing this for what I lost, and to make sure no one else has to endure what I went through.
Alex nodded silently, understanding that Nia didn't need gratitude. She needed action. When the clock struck 4 a.m., they had finished their preparations. The evidence was compiled, every critical piece ready to be handed over to the authorities. Nia stood, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but alight with unyielding resolve.
It's time to end this, Alex. Victor won't escape justice this time.
Alex nodded, meeting her determined gaze.
We'll do this together, Nia, and this time he'll pay.
Late into the night, the small office was bathed in the dim glow of a computer screen and a desk lamp. The sounds of pages flipping, keyboard keys tapping, and the occasional sigh broke the heavy silence between Alex and Nia. Sitting across from each other, both were immersed in their work, each lost in their own thoughts. Nia, her hair cascading loosely around her face, was meticulously reviewing the documents they had gathered. The bluish light of the screen illuminated her determined expression, highlighting her unwavering focus. Across the table, Alex leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting to Nia for a fleeting moment. The silence stretched until Alex finally broke it, his voice low and hesitant, as if afraid to disturb the moment.
I forgot how good you are at this.
Nia looked up, her eyes briefly widening in surprise before settling into her usual calm demeanor.
That's the first thing you forgot,
she replied softly, a trace of sarcasm lacing her tone. Alex let out a rare laugh, quiet but heavy with emotion.
You always knew how to make things right, even when they seemed impossible. My God, Nia, how could I have not seen that before?
Nia set her pen down, her steady gaze locking onto Alex's. The light reflected in her eyes sharpened her resolve.
Alex,
she said, her voice gentle yet firm.
We're not who we used to be. Everything's changed.
Alex was silent for a moment, as though weighing her words carefully. Finally, he nodded, his voice heavy with conviction.
I understand, and I won't let you down this time.
Nia turned back to her screen, resuming her work. Yet deep down, she couldn't ignore the way Alex's words, the look in his eyes, and the regret etched into his face stirred something in her she thought had long since gone cold. As the clock struck midnight, the only light in the room came from the computer screen and the warm glow of the desk lamp. After a long stretch of silence, Alex spoke again, his voice breaking through the quiet with unexpected vulnerability.
Do you remember the late nights we used to spend working like this? Back then, I always thought it would be like that forever. Just you and me, building a future together.
Rena froze for a moment, her hands hovering over the keyboard.
Alex,
she sighed.
Those days are gone. We've both changed. Not everything has changed.
Alex countered, his voice softening.
Some things are still here, Nia. I know it, and so do you.
She looked at him, her gaze sharp but tinged with a flicker of emotion.
What I know,
she said, her tone cold and measured,
is that we're sitting here because of a man who destroyed everything. Because of him, I lost part of my life. Because of him, I can't trust anyone, especially you. My God, Alex, how can you possibly think things could go back to the way they were?
Alex didn't respond right away. His head dropped slightly as if he was searching for the right words.
I don't expect things to go back to the way they were, Nia,
he said finally, his voice almost a whisper.
I just want us to have a chance to do this right, for you and for me.
Nia didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the screen, but Alex's words echoed in her mind. Could it be that, buried beneath the pain and betrayal, there was still a sliver of something she wasn't ready to face? As the night wore on, the atmosphere in the room grew quieter, heavier. Nia typed the final notes into her laptop and then straightened, turning her gaze to Alex.
Alex,
she said, her voice more resolute than ever.
I'll help you take down Victor, but only because I won't let him hurt anyone else. This isn't about us. It's about doing what's right.
Alex looked up, gratitude shining in his eyes.
Thank you, Nia. I promise you, I won't let you down.
Nia didn't respond, but her determined gaze spoke volumes. She knew that, whether or not old feelings lingered, the most important thing now was justice, and ensuring Victor paid for everything he had done. As the computer screen flickered off, both Nia and Alex understood that the real battle was only beginning. The documents they had compiled, the evidence slowly surfacing, were like the final pieces of a perilous puzzle. But in the shadows of a distant place, Victor Castillo was far from idle. The man who always stayed one step ahead was beginning to feel the ripples of disruption in the carefully constructed web he had woven. And as Alex and Nia's actions became more apparent, Victor wasted no time in responding. The next morning, in Alex's small office, the faint scent of stale coffee lingered in the air. Pale sunlight seeped through the blinds, casting uneven lines across the cluttered desk covered with files. Alex, meticulously reviewing his notes, froze as his phone vibrated in his pocket. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number, but Alex instantly knew who it was. A knot of tension formed in his chest, yet he forced himself to remain composed as he answered.
Alex Bennett?
He said, his voice steady but cold. On the other end came a voice he could never mistake, Victor Castillo. His tone was as sharp as a blade, laced with cold menace.
Alex, I thought you were smarter than this, but clearly I overestimated you.
Alex gripped the phone tightly, every muscle in his body tensing.
Victor,
he replied, keeping his voice even.
I don't know what you're talking about. Oh my God, Alex.
Victor scoffed, a dry, mocking laugh spilling into the line.
You really think I wouldn't find out? Those documents you and your little artist friend have been digging into. You thought you could outsmart me?
Alex said nothing, but his pulse quickened. Victor's voice dropped, his words deliberate and ice cold.
If you don't want both of you to go down in flames, think very carefully about whose side you're on. I can destroy everything, your career, her life, and everything you two are trying to protect. Oh my God, Alex, choose wisely before you make me your enemy.
The call ended abruptly, leaving Alex standing there, the phone still clenched in his hand. A cold sweat trickled down his spine, even though the room was far from warm. He moved quickly, striding out of his office to where Naya was working in the corner of the apartment. She looked up as he approached, her expression immediately shifting to concern when she saw the tension etched on his face.
What happened?
She asked, her tone firm. Alex sat down across from her, setting his phone on the table, his hands clasped together tightly, as if trying to steady himself.
Victor just called,
he said, his voice low. Nia froze, her eyes widening slightly.
What did he say?
Alex looked directly at her, his tone cold and serious.
He knows what we're doing, and he didn't just threaten me. He threatened you. Victor wants us to stop, or else.
His voice trailed off, as though the words were too heavy to speak.
Or else what, Alex?
Nia pressed, her gaze unwavering. Alex exhaled deeply before finally answering.
He said he would destroy us. Oh my God, Nia. He's not just a financial manipulator. He's a man who will do anything to protect himself.
Nia straightened, her hands resting firmly on the table. For a moment, fear flickered in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by resolve.
Victor isn't going to stop,
she said firmly.
We have to end this, no matter the cost. I've already lost too much, Alex. I won't let him take anything else.
Alex studied her, his expression a mix of admiration and worry.
Are you sure, Nia? If we keep going, there's no turning back?
Her voice was steady, stronger than ever.
We don't need a way back, Alex. We need justice. And if Victor thinks threats will stop me, then he's made a huge mistake.
Alex nodded, feeling a rare sense of relief in the face of Nia's unwavering determination. As the darkness of Victor's schemes loomed larger, both Nia and Alex knew there was no retreat. But not everyone agreed with their choice. This fight required not just courage, but also immense sacrifice. Something Nia's closest friend, Aisha, could not watch unfold in silence. The next day, in Nia's small apartment, Aisha entered with a worried expression. She had always been the grounding force in Nia's life, and while she understood her friend's resolve, she couldn't stand by without voicing her concerns.
Nia,
Aisha began, her voice heavy with emotion.
You need to think about this carefully. This isn't just a fight for justice. You're putting yourself in real danger.
In the soft afternoon light, Nia's small apartment was wrapped in a quiet stillness, broken only by the sound of a knock at the door. She set the stack of documents down on the table as the door opened, revealing Aisha's worried face. Aisha stepped inside, her eyes scanning the scattered papers and files strewn across the table. Turning to Nia, her voice urgent and filled with concern, she said,
Nia, you have to stop this. All of it. It's too dangerous. You don't have to put yourself in this position.
Nia gave a faint smile, but it couldn't hide the weariness etched into her features.
Aisha, you know I can't stop now. I've come too far to turn back.
Aisha moved closer to the table, pointing at the stack of documents.
Look at what you've gone through to get here. You've already suffered enough, Nia. Not just because of Victor, but because of Alex too. Oh my God, why would you trust him again? He's not worth risking everything for.
Nia lowered her head, her hands methodically gathering the papers into a neat pile. When she looked back up, her eyes held a quiet resolve tinged with a deep sadness.
Aisha,
she began, her voice soft but firm.
This isn't about Alex anymore.
Aisha hesitated, her brow furrowing with tension.
Then what is it about, Nia? What are you trying to prove? Taking on Victor isn't something you need to do alone.
Nia walked to the window, her gaze falling on the golden sunlight streaming through the towering buildings outside.
This is about closing a chapter of my life, Aisha. For too long, I've let Victor, Alex, and my own mistakes dictate how I live.
Turning back to face Aisha's worried gaze, Nia continued.
You're right. Alex doesn't deserve my trust, and Victor certainly doesn't deserve my risk. But this isn't about them. This is about me. About doing what's right, even if it means confronting the things I fear the most.
Aisha stared at her, sensing the unyielding determination behind her friend's words. But the fear in her own heart was unmistakable, reflected in her tear-bright eyes.
Nia, if you keep going, this could end worse than you think. Victor isn't just any man. He won't hesitate to hurt you, and you know that. I do,
Nia admitted, her hands gripping the edge of the windowsill.
I know exactly who Victor is, Aisha. But you also know I can't back down now. If I let him get away with this, everything I've endured will mean nothing. And you know I can't live with that. Oh my God, Nia,
Aisha whispered, her voice breaking as emotion welled in her throat.
I can't lose you. You're the only friend I have. If something happens to you, I'll never forgive myself.
Nia stepped closer to Aisha, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder.
You won't lose me, Aisha. You've been there for me through the worst of it all. And because of that, I have to do this, not just for myself, but for you and for anyone who still believes in justice.
Aisha stayed silent, searching Nia's eyes for something, anything, to convince her to stop. But all she found was an unshakable resolve.
Fine,
Aisha said at last, her voice soft but resigned.
but if you're going to do this, I'm staying. If you fall, I'll be the one to help you get back up.
Nia smiled, a real smile this time, though it was still tinged with sadness.
Thank you, Aisha, but I hope this time I won't fall.
For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their shared fears lingering between them. Yet deep down, Aisha knew nothing could stop Nia. Not fear, not danger, and certainly not Victor. All she could do was hope her friend would find what she was searching for, freedom and justice. As the afternoon light faded into twilight, the apartment grew quiet again, save for Aisha's soft sighs and Nia's resolute footsteps. Aisha's cautious support, despite her worry, was the final strength Nia needed to see this through. The painting Nia had placed on the easel wasn't just a work of art. It held critical evidence, cryptic clues pointing to Victor's shady dealings. With determination burning in her eyes, Nia prepared herself for the inevitable confrontation. As night fell, she knew she was ready to face Victor, not as a victim, but as someone holding the key to his downfall. The darkness closed in as Nia stepped into the massive building, the painting clutched tightly in her trembling hands. She wore a long, dark coat, her slow but deliberate footsteps echoing against the cold, tiled floor. Though her eyes remained resolute, her hands betrayed her unease, their slight quiver reflecting the tension that churned within her. The room where Victor awaited her was shrouded in dim light, faint beams from a few overhead fixtures barely piercing through the oppressive gloom. Victor stood at the center, a glass of wine in hand, his posture exuding a dangerous calm, but his sharp eyes glinted like those of a predator.
Well, well, the talented young woman,
he drawled, his deep voice dripping with deliberate condescension.
At last, we meet again. I must say, I admire your determination. But tell me, is it worth everything you've put on the line?
Nia didn't respond immediately. She stepped forward, placing the painting carefully on the long table in the room's center. Her gaze didn't falter as she met Victor's eyes.
I'm not here to negotiate, Victor. I'm here to end this.
Victor chuckled, the sound reverberating ominously through the cavernous space.
End this?
He repeated, his lips curling into a mocking smirk.
Do you really think you can stop me with a mere painting? Oh my God, how amusing.
Suddenly, the door behind Nia creaked open, its hinges groaning loudly in the tension. Filled air. She turned sharply, her eyes widening in shock, as Alex stepped into the room. Dressed in a dark suit, his expression was unreadable, but his cold gaze carried none of the guilt or empathy she had seen in him before. Alex strode purposefully toward the table, each step firm and deliberate. The atmosphere between them thickened as he finally spoke, his voice heavy with accusation and anger.
Nia, I can't let you betray me like this.
Nia instinctively took a step back, her hand gripping the edge of the table for support. Her eyes, brimming with both pain and confusion, met his. Her voice trembled with fury, but also heartbreak.
Alex, how could you think I would betray you?
Alex moved closer, his fists clenching at his sides, his breathing heavy.
I've seen everything, Nia. You came to Victor. You brought the painting here. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Oh my God! Did you think I'd just stand by and let you do this? I trusted you, and this is how you repay me?
His words struck like a blow, cutting deeply into Nia's pride. She inhaled sharply, her glistening eyes now burning with indignation and despair.
No, Alex.
She nearly shouted.
You don't understand. I'm not here to betray you. I'm here to stop him, to end this madness. I thought that, after everything, you would believe in me, but maybe.
Alex faltered, her words momentarily breaking through his anger. His eyes flickered with uncertainty, but he quickly steeled himself.
Mia, I can't just take your word for it. You're here with evidence standing in front of him. How am I supposed to believe you're not planning to betray me?
Mia bit her lip, her hands falling to her sides as they trembled with frustration.
You're right, Alex,
she said, her voice low but laced with sharp defiance.
You can't trust me, but that says more about you than it does about me. From the start, I've done this for justice, for everything I've lost. And you've doubted me at every turn, even though you know what I've been through. Oh my God, Alex, if you can't trust me, why are you even here?
Her words cut deep, leaving Alex momentarily stunned, as if he were grasping for a response that wouldn't come. Before he could speak, the slow, deliberate sound of clapping broke the silence.
Magnificent.
Victor's voice rang out, heavy with mockery. Each syllable echoed in the expansive room.
You two make such a fascinating pair. Watching you tear yourselves apart is the most entertaining show I've seen in years.
Victor stepped toward Nia, the polished click of his shoes on the tiled floor, resonating like a countdown. Nia stood her ground, her eyes burning with defiance despite the faint tremor in her hands. With a casual gesture, Victor summoned two armed henchmen from the shadows, their guns raised and aimed directly at her. The air in the room grew suffocating, tension coiling like a vice. Nia froze, her wide eyes betraying a flicker of fear, but she refused to step back. Victor smirked, his predatory gaze shifting to Alex. His voice was silkily cruel.
She's mine now, and you, Alex, have played your part perfectly. Exactly as I predicted. Poke at the right weakness, and you destroy everything yourself.
Alex stood motionless, as if the entire world had come crashing down around him. He looked from Victor to Nia, her expression etched with pain but still unyielding. The realization struck him like a blow. Victor had manipulated him, and his own doubts and rashness had pushed Nia into this perilous situation.
Victor, don't do this,
Alex said, his voice strained, thick with regret. He stepped forward but halted as one of the henchmen raised his weapon higher.
Let her go. I'll do whatever you want. Anything. Just don't hurt her.
Victor's mocking laughter filled the space, a cold, biting sound that chilled the air. He lifted his glass as though toasting his triumph.
Oh, Alex, you've done enough. Now just stand there and watch as I clean up the mess you've made. Regret all you want. It changes nothing.
Alex clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with fury and anguish.
Victor, please. If you want me to kneel, I'll kneel. If you want anything, I'll give it to you. But don't harm her. Let her go.
Victor raised an eyebrow, his smirk deepening.
Kneel? Do you think groveling will make a difference, Alex? I don't want your remorse. I want you to see how every mistake you've made has led to this moment. This is how I win, by letting you destroy yourselves.
Before Alex could respond, Nia's voice cut through the air like a blade.
Alex, don't make promises you can't keep. Don't say things you can't follow through on. If you want to redeem yourself, ensure that Victor never harms anyone else, including me.
Her words, steady and unwavering, hung in the air. Victor's laughter grew louder, laced with a dark satisfaction. He turned to Nia, his gaze gleaming with amusement.
You are a fascinating one, aren't you? I can see why Alex is so enamored. But sadly, you're not the one in control here. That would be me.
Alex looked at Nia, her face a mixture of pain and determination. She didn't trust him anymore, and he couldn't blame her. Her words, cold and cutting, drove the weight of his mistakes deeper into his chest. He had failed her, failed to protect her, and now he had to face the devastating consequences.
Victor,
Alex said, his voice hardening with resolve.
You think you can win forever? You think destroying others makes you invincible? You're wrong. I played your game before, but I'm done letting you pull the strings.
Victor tilted his head, studying Alex with a new spark of curiosity.
Bold words, Alex. But remember, she's here because of you.
Alex took another step forward, ignoring the barrel of the gun aimed at his chest. His voice rang out, firm and unyielding.
I'll fix my mistakes, Victor. And I won't let you hurt her, or anyone else, ever again.
The entire room seemed to hold its breath, tension building like a taut string on the verge of snapping. Yet in Nia's eyes, a faint glimmer of hope persisted, a belief that even as everything seemed to crumble, she could still find a way to rise and win. Victor sneered, his steps deliberate as he closed the distance to Nia. Leaning in, his face inches from hers, his voice hissed through clenched teeth.
You think you're strong, don't you? But remember this. People like you never win. You're a pawn. You're a pawn, nothing more, nothing less.
Straightening, he flicked his hand in a commanding gesture. Two henchmen stepped forward immediately, dragging Nia from the steel post, her wrists still bound tightly with rope.
Victor, don't do this.
Alex shouted, his voice hoarse and raw. He surged forward, but another henchman pressed the barrel of a gun against his chest, halting him in his tracks.
I'm begging you, let her go. Take everything from me, money, the company, whatever you want.
Victor turned, his gaze fixed on Alex as though savoring a tragic spectacle.
Alex, you still don't get it, do you?
He said, his voice dripping with scorn.
This isn't about money, it's about power, and your pathetic begging. It only makes this more entertaining for me.
With another wave of his hand, Nia was dragged away, her legs dragging across the cold concrete floor. She glanced back over her shoulder, her eyes locking with Alex's. There were no tears, no words of reproach, only a fragile glimmer of hope.
Alex,
she said, her voice faint but clear enough to cut through the stillness.
Do the right thing. Don't let him win.
Alex froze, his legs rooted to the ground, as the door slammed shut behind them. The sound of Victor's and his men's footsteps receded, leaving Alex alone in the cold, empty space. He sank to his knees in the middle of the barren room, his head falling into his hands. The echoes of the confrontation reverberated through his mind, every word and action a fresh wound. Nia's final words, her resolute gaze, pierced him like a blade, cutting through to the very core of his being.
Oh my God, what have I done?
He whispered, his voice breaking under the weight of his regret. Images flooded his mind. Every moment he had doubted Nia, every accusation hurled in haste, every instance his anger had clouded his judgment. All of it had led to this, a moment where the only person who had ever believed in him was taken, and he had done nothing to stop it. But deep within, a fire began to stir. Alex clenched his fists, his eyes sparking with newfound determination.
"No."
He muttered, his voice shifting from despair to resolve.
"I'm not letting this end like this. Victor was wrong to think he could control everything. I will bring Naya back, no matter the cost."
Rising to his feet, Alex scanned the room for anything that could lead him to Victor. His gaze landed on a fallen stack of papers, notes and evidence that he and Naya had gathered about Victor's operations. Among the scattered documents, one stood out, a handwritten address scrawled across the page. Warehouse 12, West Side Outskirts. Gripping the papers tightly, Alex took a steady breath, his steps purposeful as he moved toward the door. There was no room left for hesitation or fear. He knew he had to act, not just to save Nia, but to atone for every mistake he had made. The abandoned warehouse was shrouded in dense darkness, punctuated only by the faint flickers of flashlight beams. The vast, suffocating space was lined with towering rusted shelves and carried the metallic tang of dust and decay. Footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, each sound reverberating like a grim warning. Alex moved cautiously between the rows of shelves, his every step deliberate and soundless. His eyes locked on the faint glow at the center of the room, the spot where Nia was bound tightly to a large steel column. The rope cut cruelly into her wrists, leaving them red and raw. Yet her gaze remained resolute, betraying no fear despite the danger encircling her. As Alex crept closer, his breath steady and quiet, Nia's eyes suddenly caught his in the dim light. A flash of alarm crossed her face, and she shook her head subtly, silently urging him to keep away. But Alex simply nodded, signaling that he wouldn't leave her behind. Victor stood a short distance away, oblivious to Alex's presence. His voice, smug and dripping with arrogance, carried through the cavernous space as he addressed one of his henchmen.
"She's the perfect bait. This will all be over soon."
Alex approached Nia from behind the shelves, drawing a small knife from his pocket. Kneeling beside her, he began to cut through the ropes binding her wrists, his voice barely above a whisper, urgent yet gentle.
"Nia, I'm getting you out of here. Stay quiet. Don't worry."
Nina didn't respond, but her eyes glimmered with trust. He was almost through the final strand of rope when his shoe accidentally scraped against a piece of metal debris on the floor. The sharp clang rang out, slicing through the tense silence like a siren. Victor's head snapped toward the sound, his predatory eyes narrowing as he spotted Alex. He raised his gun, leveling it with deadly precision.
"Alex."
Victor sneered, his voice dripping with derision and rage.
"Did you really think you were clever enough to outsmart me?"
Without hesitation, Victor pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, deafening in the cavernous space. Alex reacted in a heartbeat, yanking Nia down with him as the bullet tore through the air above them. They hit the cold, unforgiving floor, gasping for breath.
"Run when you get the chance."
Alex yelled, his focus unwaveringly on Victor. But before Alex could make his next move, another of Victor's henchmen emerged from the shadows behind a nearby shelf. His gun trained directly at Alex's back. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. Nia, her body weak and sore from being restrained, saw the imminent threat. Without hesitation, she threw herself between Alex and the assailant.
"No."
She screamed, her voice echoing through the warehouse. The gun fired, its report piercing the air like a sharp crack of thunder. Time seemed to freeze. Nia staggered mid-motion, her wide eyes reflecting the searing pain before she collapsed to the cold concrete floor. Blood quickly spread across her chest, staining the white fabric of her shirt in vivid red. Alex stood frozen, the world around him moving in agonizing slow motion.
Nia.
He bellowed, his voice cracking under the weight of his anguish. He dropped to his knees beside her, cradling her limp body in his trembling arms. Blood seeped through his fingers, warm and sticky, a grim reminder of the stakes he had failed to protect her from.
Nia, why?
He choked out, his voice breaking as tears streamed down his face.
Why would you do this? You didn't deserve this. Oh my God, I didn't deserve your sacrifice. I'm not worth it.
Nia's breaths were shallow, each one labored and fleeting, yet her eyes remained soft as they met his.
Alex,
she whispered, her voice faint but clear.
You don't understand. This wasn't for you. It was for... What's right?
Alex knelt beside her, his body trembling as her blood pooled around them. The chaotic echoes of gunfire and footsteps seemed to fade into silence, leaving only the sound of his pounding heartbeat in his ears.
Nia, please.
He begged, his voice a raw plea.
Stay with me. I'm going to get you out of here. Do you hear me? You can't leave me now.
Rena's eyes fluttered open, her gaze weak but serene.
Alex,
she murmured, her breaths growing fainter.
Don't panic. I'll be fine. We still have a chance.
Her trembling hand reached up, slow and uncertain, to touch his arm.
The bag,
she whispered, her voice barely audible.
The painting. Take it out. It's everything I need you to see.
Fighting back tears, Alex carefully retrieved the painting from her bag, his hand shaking as he unwrapped it. His breath hitched as he unveiled the artwork. The painting depicted a lighthouse standing tall amidst a raging storm, its beam of light piercing through the chaos, unwavering. Towering waves crashed violently below, but the lighthouse remained steadfast, its light a beacon of hope. In the corner, written in delicate handwriting, were the words, "Never abandon the light, even when darkness surrounds you." Alex stared at the painting, tears streaming down his face.
Nia,
he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion.
I'm so sorry. I've been wrong so many times. But I swear to you, I'll fix this. I won't let you down again.
Nia's faint smile lingered.
Alex,
she rasped, her voice fading but resolute.
Don't just promise. Do it. Live right. And never forget what we've fought through.
Alex nodded, his resolve hardening as he cradled her closer.
I promise, Nia, I'll make it right. But you have to fight. You have to survive. Because I won't let you fight alone anymore.
Her eyes drifted shut, her breathing faint but steady. Alex pressed his fingers to her pulse, relief washing over him when he felt the fragile thrum of life. His tears mixed with the blood on his hands as he gently laid her against the wall, ensuring she was out of harm's way. Gripping the painting tightly in one hand and a gun in the other, Alex rose to his feet. The grief and guilt in his eyes burned away, replaced by a fierce determination.
Victor,
he muttered, his voice low and lethal, each word dripping with intent.
You thought you could destroy everything, but this time, I'm coming for you.
He stepped forward into the shadows, his figure towering and unrelenting. A man ready for the final battle, no longer for himself, but for the woman who believed in him and the justice they both deserved. Outside the warehouse, the flickering lights of police cars illuminated the darkened expanse. The shrill wails of sirens gradually faded as officers led Victor away, his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. Despite the bruises on his face from the confrontation, Victor maintained his signature menacing smirk. He halted his steps, his piercing gaze locking onto Alex, who stood nearby with a gun lowered in his hand. A brief silence lingered before Victor spoke, his tone dripping with mockery.
You've won this battle, Alex, but you've lost the war. Good luck surviving the mess you've created for yourself.
Alex didn't respond, though the exhaustion and fury in his eyes said everything. As Victor was pushed into the police car, Alex sank to his knees, hands bracing against his thighs, his breath coming in sharp gasps. He knew Victor was wrong, but also he wasn't entirely wrong. In the high-rise office that had once been a symbol of success, the glow of computer monitors revealed stock charts plummeting in dismal red streaks. The collapsing numbers were like daggers to Alex's pride, each one cutting deeper.
Mr. Bennett.
A voice interrupted his spiraling thoughts. It was his attorney, holding a stack of files filled with rejections.
The shareholders have all pulled out. We received 2 more resignations from the board this morning. The company is running out of funds, and unless drastic action is taken immediately.
Alex barely lifted his head, his vacant eyes fixed on the monitor. Calls from investors flooded his phone, but he didn't answer. The unread emails piled higher and higher, each subject line a grim echo of the same message. Urgent. Withdrawal of investment. He slumped into his chair, dragging a hand over his face. Everything he had built, everything he had dreamed of, was crumbling like a sandcastle, swept away by relentless waves. In the stark white hospital room, faint light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow over Naya's face. She lay motionless in the hospital bed, her frail body surrounded by a maze of blankets and medical equipment. Bandages still wrapped tightly around her wounds, hiding the pain inflicted by the bullet. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor filled the room, creating an unsettling stillness. Nia opened her eyes, staring blankly at the ceiling. Her gaze was empty, as if her mind had been drawn into another world where painful memories played on an endless loop.
I fought,
she thought, the words echoing in her mind.
But do I still have the strength to fight again?
Beside her bed, a small painting stood propped on an easel, the same painting she had handed to Alex. The light caught the image of a lighthouse. The light caught the image of a lighthouse standing resolute amidst a raging storm. But now, as she looked at it, she felt only a cold, hollow emptiness. The door creaked open and Alex entered, his face etched with exhaustion and regret. He approached her bedside and sat down, hesitating to touch her hand.
Mia,
he said softly, his voice cracking.
I don't even know where to begin, but I want you to know I'm sorry for everything.
Nia didn't respond immediately. She turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting his. In her gaze, there was no anger, no blame, only a profound sadness.
Alex,
she said, her voice weak but steady.
I don't need your apology. I just need to know.
Alex nodded, though her weary tone twisted something deep inside him. He understood that for Nia, the journey to recover, from both the physical and emotional scars, would be arduous. But he also knew that she was stronger than anyone he had ever known.
You won't have to do it alone,
Alex said, his eyes filled with resolve.
I'll be here. Whether you want me to or not, I'll be here.
Mia closed her eyes, saying nothing more. Yet in the silence, a faint glimmer of light sparked within her. A small reminder that, while the road ahead was long, she had survived the worst, and she still had a chance to begin anew. The old house sat nestled in a narrow alley, surrounded by crumbling walls and dusty, cracked tiles. A sliver of light streamed through the high window, casting faint rays across the expansive but dilapidated interior, with its high ceilings and bare, stained walls. Alex stood in the middle of the vast room, his gaze sweeping across the space with a resolve stronger than ever. His hand brushed lightly against the cold, rough wall, before he turned to the designer accompanying him.
Transform this place into something that inspires people like Nia,
he said, his voice low but firm.
A space where they can remember their worth, where they can create beauty even in the face of pain and loss.
The designer glanced at the sketchpad in his hands, hesitating slightly.
You want to use the entire area for an art exhibition and teaching center? The renovation will cost a fortune, yes?
Alex answered without hesitation. He turned, his gaze locking onto the designers with unwavering determination. Another staff member approached, holding a folder, their voice tinged with uncertainty.
Mr. Bennett, are you sure you want to invest everything you have left into this? It's all you have after the bankruptcy.
Alex nodded, his voice steady yet filled with quiet determination.
Money means nothing if I can't use it to do what's right. I've destroyed too much in my life. It's time I create something I can be proud of.
The designer studied Alex for a long moment before nodding.
We'll do everything we can to turn this into the center you envision, a place filled with art and hope.
Alex offered a faint smile but didn't respond. He walked to a corner of the room where the light from the window spilled down in golden streaks. For a moment, he imagined Nia's paintings adorning the walls, women holding brushes, their smiles radiant with life.
What will we call this place?
Someone asked. Alex looked up, his gaze steady as he answered.
The lighthouse, because its light led me out of the darkness.
In the sterile white hospital room, the soft glow of a bedside lamp cast gentle light on Nia's pale face. She lay motionless on the bed, her breathing steady but frail. White bandages wrapped tightly around her body, silent witnesses to the pain and struggle she had endured. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor merged with the ticking clock on the wall, creating an atmosphere both still and heavy. Alex sat by her bedside, his eyes fixed on her face as if afraid that if he looked away, she would vanish forever. Gently, he reached out, his fingers brushing against her cold hand, gripping it tightly as though it were his lifeline to what remained between them.
I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Nia,
Alex said softly, his voice trembling but earnest.
I don't deserve it, but I am asking for a chance to make amends. No matter how long it takes, I'll stay.
He bowed his head, his shoulders shaking slightly.
I've hurt you so much, I know that, but I can't go back and undo the past. The only thing I can do now is make sure I never lose you again.
Nia's fingers twitched faintly, a small but deliberate movement in response to his touch. Her eyes slowly fluttered open, and when they met his, there was no warmth, only a deep exhaustion.
Alex,
she said weakly, her voice carrying both weariness and emotion. Her gaze held his for a brief moment, and in it flickered something fragile, a glimmer caught between disappointment and hope.
Do you think just being here is enough?
Alex straightened, his eyes filled with anguish and regret.
I don't think it's enough,
he admitted, his voice dropping.
But I'll do whatever it takes, Nia, even the smallest chance. I won't let it slip through my hands.
Nia studied him, her eyes no longer cold but still laden with hurt.
I can't forgive you so easily, Alex,
she said softly, her words sharp but steady. Turning her face toward the window, she gazed at the faint light of dawn filtering through the curtains.
Don't expect me to forget the pain you've caused me. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away,
Alex replied, firmly.
I'm just asking you to let me prove that I've changed, that I won't hurt you again.
She didn't answer, simply closing her eyes as if to end the conversation. But Alex didn't leave. He remained by her side, his hand still clasping hers, his gaze fixed on her pale yet resilient face. From that day forward, Alex devoted every waking moment to Nia's recovery. Carefully, he changed the bandages on her wounds, his touch gentle and precise, as if trying to heal more than just her physical pain. Each morning, he helped her sit up, arranging pillows behind her back to ensure her comfort. He supported her as she took tentative steps, his hands steadying her, his eyes never straying from her smallest movements.
Nia, if it hurts, just tell me,
Alex said, his voice laced with concern as she tried to stand upright.
I don't need you to remind me, Alex,
Nia replied, her tone weary but resolute.
I've endured far worse than this.
Yet the unspoken distance between them remained, a barrier invisible yet heavy as steel. Alex knew it would take time to break through, but he refused to give up. Each night as Nia slept, Alex sat by her bedside, his gaze drifting to the painting of the lighthouse resting on the small table. The lamp's glow cast light onto the canvas, making the beacon's rays seem to shine brightly in the stillness of the room.
"You fought for me,"
Alex whispered, his voice filled with both remorse and determination.
"Now it's my turn to fight for you, and this time I won't let you down."
Though Nia didn't say it aloud, Alex sensed that she noticed his efforts. Each time she opened her eyes and saw him there, each time she witnessed the care he poured into every action, Alex knew she was slowly giving him a chance to make things right. And so, day by day, Alex persevered, not only to atone for what he had done, but also to rediscover the man he had always wanted to be. As the long days of atonement passed, a faint glimmer of hope began to shine. Alex's quiet but steadfast presence became an integral part of Nia's recovery. Though her wounds, both physical and emotional, were far from healed, every step she took and every brushstroke she made symbolized a new beginning. Alex knew that redemption couldn't simply end with words or daily acts of care. He needed to do something greater, not just for Nia, but to give meaning to the pain they had endured and transform it into something that could inspire others. And so, one day, as the doors to the newly completed art center swung open, Alex stood in its vast space, bathed in soft light streaming through the tall windows. He felt a quiet reverence as he gazed at the empty walls, ready to be filled with stories and inspiration. The exhibition hall was awash with light. Beams from spotlights reflected off the paintings adorning the walls, creating a space that felt both vibrant and intimate. Nia's colorful, spirited works infused life into the room, turning the once empty walls into a celebration of resilience and expression. At the center of the hall, a small stage had been set up. All eyes were fixed on a large canvas draped in red fabric. The centerpiece of the exhibition. Murmurs of anticipation and curiosity filled the room, but they gradually faded as Alex stepped onto the stage. Dressed in a simple black suit, Alex's face betrayed a mix of tension and deep emotion. He paused before the veiled painting, his gaze scanning the room until it rested on Nia, seated near the stage. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak, his voice steady yet resonant with feeling.
"This center was built not only to honor art, but to celebrate stories of perseverance and hope. Today, I want to unveil a very special painting. A message, not just for me, but for all of us."
Turning back to the painting, Alex grasped the edge of the red fabric. As he slowly pulled it away, the room seemed to collectively hold its breath. All eyes turned to the unveiled painting, a towering lighthouse standing defiantly amidst a raging storm. Light poured from its summit, cutting through the darkness, while waves crashed furiously at its base, unable to shake its steadfast foundation. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. But what truly captivated them were the faint lines of text woven into the painting's intricate details, visible only when the light struck them at the right angle.
"You hurt me once, but I still believe in your ability to change."
Alex stepped aside, his hands trembling slightly as he let the fabric fall to the floor. Facing the audience again, his voice wavered but carried an undeniable sincerity.
"Ria gave me this painting in a moment when she thought there was nothing left to say. But this is more than a work of art. It's her message, not just to me, but to all of us. A message about hope, forgiveness, and the strength to rise again after loss."
He paused, searching the crowd until his eyes found Nia. His voice thick with emotion, he continued,
"Nia, you said you believed in my ability to change. And that belief helped me find my way back to myself. I can't undo the past, but I promise to use the future to prove you weren't wrong."
The room fell silent, as if every person present was swept up in the raw emotion of his words. Nia sat frozen, her eyes locked on the lines of text, glimmering on the canvas. Memories of the moment she had created the painting came rushing back, mingling with the overwhelming tide of emotions swelling within her. Her hands trembled as she raised them to her mouth, tears streaming silently down her face. She whispered, as though speaking only to herself,
"How could he possibly understand the weight of those words?"
Alex stepped off the stage, his movements deliberate and heavy with emotion. He made his way toward Nia, lowering himself to one knee before her. His eyes brimmed with sincerity and remorse.
"Nia,"
he said softly, his voice quivering.
"I can't change what's happened, but you've taught me how to truly see myself, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that your faith in me wasn't misplaced."
Nia stared at him, her gaze filled with complexity, pain, hope, and something else she wasn't yet ready to name. She didn't speak but slowly reached out, her hand trembling as she touched the painting on the wall. Her fingers brushed the textured strokes, no longer trembling from fear or sorrow, but from the faint, burgeoning belief that something better lay ahead.
"Alex,"
she murmured, her voice thick with emotion.
"do you really understand what it means? I don't just understand.
Alex replied, his voice steady now.
I'm living it, living to become the person you can be proud of, not just because of what you said, but because I know it's the right thing to do."
Mina's lips curved into a faint smile, though tears still streaked her face. She stood slowly, her movements unsteady but full of resolve. The room held its collective breath as she stepped toward Alex, reaching out to take his hands.
"Alex,"
she said softly but firmly,
"I can't forget everything that's happened, but if you're truly ready to change, I'm willing to give you a chance to prove it."
Alex stared at her, his eyes glistening with emotion. He tightened his grip on her hands, as if anchoring himself to the promise she had just made.
"Thank you, Nia,"
he whispered, his voice breaking.
"Thank you for believing in me one more time."
Gentle applause filled the room, but Alex and Nia didn't linger in the spotlight. They quietly stepped outside together. The two walked toward the nearby shore, where the setting sun painted the sky and sea in hues of fiery orange. The soft breeze carried the scent of salt and the sound of waves, washing away the remnants of pain that lingered between them. They stood side by side, gazing at the shimmering waves under the fading sunlight.
"This is a beginning,"
Nia said softly, her voice tinged with hope.
"Yes?"
Alex replied, his eyes fixed on the horizon.
"A new beginning for both of us."
Their hands intertwined more tightly, a silent promise to face whatever lay ahead together. In the glowing light of the sunset, their silhouettes merged, radiating a peace and hope that mirrored the story they had fought so hard to rewrite. What are your thoughts on forgiveness and sacrifice? If you're curious about the secret still untold, stay tuned for more videos on our channel, where the emotions never truly end.